before I go to the floor, I've actually got a question which I'd like to ask Kelly, really, first of all. Obviously, a company like UTC, a big company, lots of resources across all different types of products and systems that make up the building services of buildings. And I think, you know, from all three speakers, we've seen there that it really is possible to improve energy efficiency. How do you think you can persuade building owners to take up these fantastic presentations of, you know, sort of information that you provided, to take that up in their buildings?
Yeah. Great question, Vincent. You know, it is a challenge. It's all about education and awareness. One of the, you know, couple things that we're trying to do. One is we've put together teams of experts in each of the regions. So in the Americas, in Europe, and in Asia, where these teams of, you know, engineers go and collaborate directly with, you know, the developers, the engineers of these buildings. And they're not just representing, say, the elevator, you know, Otis elevators or just Carrier air conditioning. They're representing everything that we have to offer. And then we'll do what's called design charrettes, where we actually will sit down, roll up our sleeves and say, okay, what's possible? You know, how are we going to make it happen? You know, in almost every case, we can take cost out, but, you know, a lot of building owners get scared. They say, well, you know, it's going to cost me more money and, you know, to be green, whatever it might be, or sustainable. And gee, higher efficiency equipment costs more money. But I think, you know, we now can prove the case that when you do implement one high efficiency equipment and then you manage it, you tie it together and you manage it. You know, we had great examples here with Michael and Patrick. It's, you know, I can provide the most efficient chiller in the world to you and still have a lousy energy consumption in the building because, you know, if it's not managed properly. So I think it's about collaboration across all of the different influencers, decision makers, and you know, in the buildings.
Yeah. No, that's very well point made there. I think it's interesting also that the slide you had up there regarding the project in India, where you found, you know, quite a lot of, you know, sort of pretty serious faults with the installations. And again, I think it's getting to grips with those and uncovering those, obviously through the work that can be done, obviously improves that for the building occupants as well in terms of their welfare. Okay, I'm going to open this up to the floor now. We've got some microphones that are coming round. So questions, there's a question over there. Just a gentleman there.
Hello, Craig Schroeder from Bureau Happold. A question for you, maybe your observations on the energy density in buildings. One observation that we tend to have in buildings is that newer offices are actually using more energy, not less, even if they are efficiently using that energy. Could you comment on that in terms of understanding how to performance manage that?
Sure. That's a great question, and I think very related to density in terms of occupants as well. Obviously, 15, 20 years ago, there weren't data centers, there weren't major TV studios, trading floors, you know, huge server rooms that occupy buildings today. The most recent office building that we developed is in Times Square. It's the North American headquarters for Thomson Reuters. It was built to a LEED Gold standard before LEED certification existed in the late 90s, early 2000s. And today, that building can't achieve a LEED rating because the tenants in the building use so much energy for their data centers, for their studios, for their trading floors. And I think you know, it's a big issue getting not just companies but individuals as well to realize that they don't need as much power per square foot, or however you want to measure it, to run their business. We see when leasing space this huge issue where tenants and brokers and companies are very hung up with the fact that they need a certain wattage per square foot. And one of the things that we think, you know, DBOS is useful in, it is proving to those people that it's a fraction of that amount. So it's just, again, it's about education and collaboration and finding ways to improve the technologies that are already out there and make people understand that it's not as necessary as they think it is.
I think that's a very valid point. And in fact, quite often, certainly in the UK, in London, I'm sure in other cities, we have the same sort of issue where letting agents actually come up with very high design criteria, specifications. I think as an industry, one of the problems we used to have is because we never had this real live data, it's very difficult to actually challenge those. But I think, from what you're saying there, Michael, is that we've now got the technology and the information, the data that's coming through, that actually that can be challenged and perhaps get more realistic values in terms of power and cooling and heating that's actually required in buildings. Okay, another question. Yes, over there.
Thank you. Kelly, the question is addressed to you. I'm from an engineering company in India. Just a running thought that came to my mind when you flashed up that building in Trivandrum. One, you audit buildings with building solutions that are only your equipment, or would you do that for another company's equipment as well? And secondly, help me understand if you 3 or 4 years after having installed your own equipment can do an energy audit and determine 27% or whatever other number that you said can be saved. Why not at the pre-sales stage when your salespeople or your frontline people can actually sell the whole story to begin with?
So yes, we will, we are agnostic when it comes to going into a building and, doing commissioning, retro commissioning, that kind of thing, helping owners to understand where they can save energy. So we welcome that opportunity, whether it's our equipment or not our equipment. And in fact, our building management system works with anybody's equipment. So we'll tie in, our competitors' equipment, right? And it's, it's all about, integrating all of these systems, same as Michael mentioned, as much of the data that we can pull in from every system and make it smart. There's big opportunity there. And then in terms of, integrating the technologies, I'm losing your second question there as I was thinking about the first one there.
No worries, I'll just repeat that again. When you said that, you can do sort of a retrospective audit on how you can, add up the savings for a substantial number, how about doing that at the pre-sales stage? Or why not do that at the pre-sales stage? Because I'm sure you have the data and the analysis ready.
Well, actually, in this case, again, so the International Finance Center. So, we went in and, in 2010, designed a whole high-efficiency system, but it was, we put in all high-efficiency equipment, and we managed it as what I would say the industry does in a typical building management system, with how we've always, staged the chillers, the towers, the pumps. We went back in, this was a, if you will, pilot for us. So we went back in, developed smart learning algorithms, tied in a lot more data, weather and otherwise, occupancy, and then staged the chillers, towers, and pumps in a much different way than we've ever done before. So, it's very sophisticated in how it operates. And, what we then did is said, okay, let's put this into if you will, a plant system manager program that we can take out to many other customers. So we, in fact, put it back into our R&D center and said, okay, now that we've proven this, the case, and we've developed this technology, we want to be able to do it on every building. And, we put it back in the R&D center. It's been, put into a system that we've rolled out and trained our people around the world in, and then in fact, right now, we can go into, any building and repeat the process in a reliable, repeatable way. So I guess I would say it was, a new way of operating the building, from the way the industry typically does it in the past.
Okay, right. Patrick, I've got a question for you, actually, regarding the work that you found in your building. quite often what we've found is there's a real disconnect between the designers of buildings in terms of the services, and then of course the guys who are actually going to be operating the building once the building is finished and occupied. From your sort of work that you did on the ICC, were there any particular parts of the building in terms of the systems that actually you could feed back to the project teams and say, look, from our analysis, you could actually perhaps improve this particular part? Was there any areas that you found that could be improved for the designers?
Okay, thank you for your questions. As a matter of fact, I must thank my colleague and my project team of our group. They have a good design and provide and install such a very sophisticated system. For example, building management system, power monitoring system, etc. These systems facilitate a lot of operation as well as energy management. Without such kind of sophisticated system, we cannot collect and trace the trend of the system operation status or performance. By making use of such kind of system, we collect data for analysis and formulate a lot of adjustment or modification to suit the actual operation condition. I will not say there is something problem or something issues about the design, because I think there are so many engineers here. Basically, how can we do a design? The design must be suitable or capable for the maximum capacity consumption. But during the building operation, there is another, maybe there's something, the condition may be totally different from the thinking at the day one. So our value of the operation engineer are to collect data to fully understand how our system work, how their performance under the actual situations. So what we are doing is collect more data for analysis, formulate strategies to optimize our systems. So I was happy to share all of our experience or practice in these aspects with our colleagues in the design team, and I will also happy to share our practice or experience to everybody of the external organization or all the professionals in the same industry.